Welcome to our deep dive on Zion National Park. Um, Before I saw these sources, I kind of pictured Zion as just a really big hole in the ground. But wow, was I wrong. It's like stepping into a painting, one that stretches back millions of years. We've got two really cool sources today. One is like a photo album highlighting all the park's stunning visuals, and then the other one tells a story through those same images, really drawing us into the landscape.
It's a fantastic combination. The photos give us that instant wow factor, capturing the scale and grandeur of Zion, but the storytelling adds a layer of depth. It helps us understand how this incredible landscape came to be.
Okay, let's dive into those photos. The first thing that struck me was the sheer size of the cliffs. I mean, they're absolutely colossal. And the colors, incredible. Reds, whites, golds, all set against that brilliant blue sky. It's like something out of a dream.
It's that contrast that really makes Zion so captivating. You have these massive, imposing cliffs, and yet there's this incredible sense of peace and tranquility. And it all comes down to the power of nature, working over millions of years to sculpt this landscape.
Millions of years. That's mind-boggling. So how exactly did the Virgin River carve out this massive canyon? I mean, it doesn't seem like something water could do.
Well, it's a combination of factors, really. The Virgin River is a powerful force, especially during flash floods. And it carries sediment that acts like sandpaper, slowly grinding away at the rock. Then you have the uplift of the Colorado Plateau, which gradually raised the entire region, giving the river more cutting power over time. And of course, you have the constant weathering and erosion from wind and rain and ice, all playing their part in shaping the landscape. It's a slow, patient process, but the results are spectacular.
I'm fascinated by the idea of deep time, like looking at those layers of rock. It's like reading a history book, with each layer telling a story about the forces that shape this place.
Exactly. And it's not just about the physical processes. The sources also highlight how those geological formations support a remarkable diversity of life. You have plants clinging to the steep canyon walls, trees finding root holds in the most unlikely places. It really speaks to the resilience of nature, its ability to adapt and thrive even in harsh conditions.
Right, and I love how the sources capture that contrast between the ruggedness of the landscape and the delicacy of life. You have these towering cliffs, and then you see these delicate wildflowers blooming in the cracks, these trees with their roots snaking down the rock face. It's a beautiful juxtaposition.
And it reflects a fundamental ecological principle, the delicate balance of an ecosystem. Even in a seemingly harsh environment like Zion, life finds a way. And one of the most striking examples of that is the way plants have adapted to the extremes of light and shadow in the canyon.
When I think about deserts, I usually picture these vast, empty landscapes. But from what I'm seeing in these sources, Zion is anything but barren. There's so much life there, even if it's not always immediately apparent.
That's right. And a lot of that life is tucked away in those microclimates created by the interplay of light and shadow. For example, one of the sources mentions the pinyon pine, which thrives in the higher elevations of Zion. It's adapted to survive in those arid conditions, with its deep taproot system allowing it to access water sources deep within the rock.
So it's like the canyon itself is providing shelter and sustenance for these plants. It's amazing how everything is interconnected.
That's a key takeaway from these sources,
I
the
know.
interconnectedness of everything in Zion's ecosystem, from the geology to the plant and animal life to the human history that's interwoven with the landscape. And speaking of human history, one of the sources delves into the Paiute perspective on Zion, which is incredibly fascinating. For the Paiute people, this wasn't just a beautiful landscape, it was a sacred space deeply connected to their culture and spirituality.
That's really intriguing. I'm curious to learn more about how they viewed Zion as sacred. What were some of their beliefs and practices that reflected that connection?
Well, for the Paiute, the natural world was infused with spiritual power. They saw the canyons, the rivers, the plants, and animals as all interconnected and inhabited by spirits. Zion in particular was a place where they could connect with their ancestors, perform ceremonies, and seek guidance from the spirits.
It makes you think about how different cultures throughout history have found spiritual meaning in nature. From ancient myths to modern-day rituals, there seems to be this universal human need to connect with something larger than ourselves.
Absolutely. And it's not just about organized religion or specific beliefs. I think there's something about experiencing the vastness and beauty of nature that can evoke a sense of awe and wonder, a feeling of connection to something beyond our everyday lives.
I know, I definitely feel that when I'm hiking in a place like Zion. It's like all the stress and worries of everyday life just melt away,
Mhm.
and you're left with this feeling of peace and clarity.
That's something both sources capture really well. They emphasize that Zion is not just a place to see, but a place to experience. Whether you're hiking to a scenic overlook wading in the Virgin River, or simply sitting quietly and taking it all in, there's a sense of being present in the moment, of connecting with something deeper within yourself.
It's interesting how those ideas of interconnectedness and balance, which you talked about earlier in terms of ecology,
Mhm.
also seem to apply to the human experience in Zion.
It's almost as if the landscape itself invites us to contemplate those concepts. The way the delicate ecosystems thrive amidst the harshness of the canyon, the way human history is interwoven with the natural world, it all points to the interconnectedness of everything.
And it makes you realize how important it is to protect these places, not just for their beauty, but for the lessons they can teach us about ourselves and our place in the world.
Absolutely. And one of the things that struck me about these sources is how they both emphasize the importance of understanding the history of Zion. Not just the geological history, but the human history as well.
You're right. Knowing that the Paiute people have called this land home for centuries adds another layer of meaning to the experience. It's a reminder that we're not just visitors passing through, but part of a much larger story.
Exactly. And that story includes the impacts of human actions on the environment. One of the sources touches on the challenges of balancing conservation with recreation, especially as Zion's popularity continues to grow.
It's a delicate balance, isn't it? On the one hand, you want people to experience the beauty and wonder of these places, but on the other hand, you need to protect them from overuse and degradation.
It's a challenge that national parks all over the world are facing. And it requires a shift in thinking, a recognition that these are not just playgrounds for us to enjoy, but vital ecosystems that need to be protected for future generations.
It's almost like that sense of awe and wonder we were talking about can be a double-edged sword. It can inspire us to protect these places, but it can also lead to a desire to conquer them, to leave our mark on them.
That's a really insightful point. And it speaks to the importance of education, of helping people understand the fragility of these ecosystems and the impact of their actions.
One of the sources talks about the leave no trace ethic, which seems like a good starting point. It's about minimizing our impact on the environment, leaving these places as pristine as we found them.
Exactly. It's about shifting from a mindset of extraction to a mindset of stewardship, recognizing that we have a responsibility to care for these places for the benefit of all living things.
And that responsibility extends beyond national parks, doesn't it? It's about being mindful of our impact on the environment in our everyday lives, making choices that support sustainability and conservation. It really makes you think about the choices we make, even the small ones, and how they can add up to something bigger, like maybe opting for a reusable water bottle instead of a disposable one, or choosing to walk or bike instead of driving whenever possible.
Exactly. Those seemingly small choices can collectively have a significant impact. And these sources, while focused on Zion, really offer a broader message about our relationship with the natural world.
You know, one thing that's really striking me as we've been talking is how both of these sources manage to convey so much about Zion without actually being there. The photography in one is so vivid, and the storytelling in the other is so immersive. It's like they've managed to bottle the essence of the park.
That's a great observation, and I think it speaks to the power of different mediums to evoke a sense of place. The photographer, through careful composition and a keen eye for detail, captures those fleeting moments of beauty that might otherwise go unnoticed.
It's like they're helping us see things we might miss if we were just wandering around on our own. Like I might be so focused on the enormity of the cliffs that I wouldn't even notice the intricate patterns of the lichen growing on the rocks.
Exactly. And then the storyteller, by weaving together those visual impressions with historical anecdotes, ecological insights, and personal reflections, creates a narrative that draws us in and makes us feel a deeper connection to the landscape.
It's like they're giving us the backstory, the context that helps us appreciate the full significance of what we're seeing.
And when those two approaches come together, it's truly magical. You're not just looking at a picture, you're experiencing the place through the eyes of the artist and the storyteller.
It makes me want to grab my hiking boots and head out there right now. But even if I can't physically be in Zion, these sources have given me a much deeper appreciation for its beauty, its history, and its importance.
And that's ultimately what we hope you'll take away from this deep dive. That even if you never have the chance to visit Zion in person, you can still connect with its spirit, appreciate its lessons, and be inspired to be a better steward of our planet.
So as we wrap up, what's one thing you hope listeners will carry with them from our exploration of Zion?
I hope they'll remember that sense of wonder and interconnectedness that we've been talking about. That even in a world that often feels divided and chaotic, there are still places of profound beauty and peace that can remind us of what truly matters.
Beautifully said. And to our listeners, I would add this. Whether you're exploring a grand national park or just taking a walk in your local park, take the time to really see the natural world around you. Notice the details, feel the connection, and let yourself be filled with that sense of awe and wonder that makes life so rich and meaningful.
And never underestimate the power of those small actions we talked about earlier. Those choices we make each day to live more sustainably, to reduce our impact on the environment, to advocate for the protection of our natural heritage.
Because ultimately, it's those collective choices that will determine the future of places like Zion and the health of our planet as a whole.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into Zion National Park. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep wondering.